Buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving into everybody's favorite duo across the NHL, Frostbee.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, I thought that we could talk about the half a season that Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee had in Calgary after being traded from Philly, and talk about kind of, what we got and what you can expect heading into next season and what's a realistic contract extension for Morgan Frost. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And let's just jump right in because this trade happened so fast. The Flyers game ended, and we saw that Kuzmenko, the Flames game was just starting, and we saw that Kuzmenko was a healthy scratch. And then at some point, Jacob Pelletier gets pulled, and no one really knows what's going on because, you think, oh, like Kuzmenko's definitely going to get traded. Like all signs pointed to that. And then one of the biggest hearts in the locker room just gets traded with him, which, that's tough, but it is unfortunately part of the business. And it was such an odd dynamic for the rest of the game because obviously everyone spent that first intermission like saying goodbye to their teammates unexpectedly. And at the end of the game, Matt Coronado looked like he truly had just lost his best friend. Jonathan Huberdeau was not great. Appearance wise, and that shakes things up. So imagine how it must have felt on the other end of things for two core players that have been with the Flyers organization for the last 6-7 years to also be plucked from their organization. And granted, it wasn't mid-game, but it was post game, and it happens. And it was just one of those things where, ultimately, like the Flames fan group, the fan base lost Jacob Pelletier, who was vibes per 60. Just so happy. Everyone's biggest cheerleader, no matter who they were, how long they'd been on the team, giving Huberdeau little kisses after he scored. Like sunshine. And the Flyers also lost two big personalities that were deeply rooted in Philly, and there's a reason why everybody was so obsessed with Frostbee and how it originated in Philly and then obviously carried over. Both of them obviously needed a change of scenery. Morgan Frost was a name that had been on the trade block, I feel like, truly for the last 3 years. I feel like his name was always circulating around the deadline, but I didn't really know that Joel Farabee was also potentially going to be traded. I didn't know that was an option, I guess. But they, team swapped, nice little trade. Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee are both famously noted for saying that we drive a truck now. So it was a huge change of way like lifestyles from the city life in Philly to the city life in Calgary. And it's not like you have a whole lot of time to figure out housing and who's going to take over your payments really it doesn't matter, they're rich, but what's going to happen with the last place you lived versus where you're going to live, how far is it? You don't have a lot of time. And granted, you do have people that work on that for you, but it is still a lot of stress. The change of scenery for Farabee and Frost was a long time coming. It was bound to happen, especially for Frost. But Frost had 11 goals in 43 games with Philly, and Farabee had just 8 goals in 50 games with Philly, and we're gonna talk about, what they did and didn't do in Calgary coming up next, but, it was all signs were pointing to that that change of scenery needing to happen, especially with Frost, being an RFA. Ultimately, that's what the Flames have wanted. They've wanted to acquire a young player that still has team control left to them. They're not interested in rentals where the player can just be gone the next day or next season, I should say. Um, I think that with Farabee, you are getting a lot of time left on that contract, a lot of time. Um, but, you know, it's, it how many players do the Flames have under a long-term contract right now? Like, let's be serious. You have Huberdeau, you have Kadri, Weegar, and Farabee. Like, there's still, there's a chunk of them. So truly, what's one more? But coming up next, we're gonna dive into what you got from Frostby and just kind of why a transition like this was needed and also why it took so long to get settled in here on Locked On Flames. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, giving each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber, better for you, unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I am a ride or die for the no shell variety. The salt and vinegar no shells that Wonderful Pistachio sent me will absolutely be purchasing and repurchasing and keeping my cupboards stocked because they are perfect for when I am working at home doing Flames coverage, whether I'm on the go during the summer going for picnics or just a snack in the car, or when I'm at my day job. Fantastic, quick, and easy snack. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locked On Flames and making the show part of your day. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. I think, everyone is fully aware, including Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee, that they need to be better. They have to come back next season after being settled in, having a nice long off season, that they need to be doing more out on the ice. And they Farabee said in his exit interview that, he knows that this is some of the worst hockey he's played and he sucked. So, it's not like for a lack of self-awareness. I don't think that that's the case at all, which is great because sometimes you have players that just pretend like I don't know what you're talking about, but to have someone own it is a step in the right direction, and it shows a level of responsibility that I think should be demonstrated across all locker rooms, but especially the Flames with a lot of these young guys. Uh, you can't expect things to go perfectly and smoothly right off the bat after being plucked and dropped across North America where you don't know anyone but each other. And you also can't just expect the Flames roster to magically just change. The I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, I guess, the dynamic isn't going to change immediately. You're going to see some spurts of it, but it's not like you're adding Connor McDavid to your lineup, okay? You're not adding Sidney Crosby. You're adding two players to do a job. And Craig Conroy referred to those two addition or yeah, those 2 additions as a reward for their hard work, and to me, that's great. I think that that is awesome. I don't think you should necessarily punish your team for, overachieving, especially when they were projected to be a draft lottery team. I think that, the Flames have really never done anything in a traditional way, so I don't think their rebuild is going to be traditional at all, as we have seen. But the Flames were a fringe playoff team. They were in it until game 81. That it is what it is. And these 2 players were brought in to try to push them over the edge and to work towards the playoffs. And the fact that they were in it until game 81, it says a lot. So, let's take a look at what we have here. To me, this is very reminiscent of like the trial period you had with Toffoli, right? Your team was doing very well. And then you bring him in at the deadline and you still have like a few years left of his contract. But you see where he fits with the group, how the dynamic changes, where he fits best in the lineup, and things worked out all right there. And now you see where things go from here. Morgan Frost averaged about 16 minutes a night. He was on the power play, and I think to me, that is an area where I think he'll grow. I think you'll see a lot more from him there. As as he has a full season with the Flames power play. And he had 3 goals, 12 points in 32 games with the Flames. You want more from that. You need more from him. And that's why he was brought here. A younger center. And, he has an impressive face-off rate. I mean, granted, you're hoping to see more from him, but better than where things have been for the Flames. So I do give him credit there. And I think that he is a good addition. I do. I don't have an issue with Frost. And I hope that this next contract is good for him and it's a comfortable fit for the Flames. And with Farabee, he was averaging about 14 minutes a night. No penalty kill, but was on the power play. I really do think that with the Flames systems, the way things are roster construction wise as well, you can put anyone on the Flames power play and try to make something happen. The power play does need more work because you still don't have necessarily a sharpshooter. I think that Matt Coronado is a player that you could absolutely put on the power play and you'll see him make a difference. I think Zary is another one of those players, but you have to kind of flesh out all your options. And I'm hopeful that something happens and the power play gets going. And same with the penalty kill. I think based off of this year, the Flames really need to focus on the penalty kill. Special teams as a whole, but also penalty kill, because if you're going to be shorthanded as many times as you were, let's make sure you can handle yourself and hold your own. But it goes without saying that both Frost and Farabee need to see an increase in production. You have 5 years, sorry, 4 years left on the uh, Farabee deal at $5 million a year. So let's try to uh, let's try to do something there. I know that it seems silly to say that, but at the end of the day, the Flames have to get the offense going. They have to find something that works. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. And if you are a team running on, let's run it back with the same group. How are you going to get the offense going? Because the only way I kind of see things happening here is if you remove elder centers, not named Nazem Kadri, put in younger players. Let's say, you traded for Morgan Frost. Let's say you trade for Marco Rossi. Hello. Um, Things could really get going there. I think Marco Rossi is a top 6 player. I think Morgan Frost would be great as your third line center. And your fourth line center for this season, Michael Backlund. I think if you really want to look at it that way, with making minimal changes as possible, that's what you're going to have to do. Or if you go out, let's say you somehow trade Kadri. I don't think that that's happening. I really don't. But let's say you trade Anderson, so you're able to integrate more defense. You add Zane Parekh, because Zane Parekh is capable of scoring. Same with Hunter Brustowicz. You have options, but what do you want to do? Or do you keep Backlund on the third line and integrate Morton, another young center? Like, you have so many options here, and it's entirely up to Craig Conroy and co. how they move forward with this, how they decide to make the most of every single player on their roster, because it's not just Frost and Farabee that need to be better. It's not. There are a lot of names on the roster that have to step up, and they need to figure out a way to make the most of them, or keep the revolving door going, because if they're serious about building a Stanley Cup contending team, you don't waste time. So, coming up next, we're going to talk about what you can possibly expect out of Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee next season here on Locked On Flames. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. Morgan Frost is an RFA, and you have Joel Farabee locked up for quite a bit of time. So, obviously, only one of them you're worried about contractually. With Frost being an RFA, I don't see someone offer sheeting for him. You're going to see more of the likes of like a Matthew Nyes, maybe a Connor Zary, depending on how gutsy a team wants to be, and how silly they want to be. But I think we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that at all. So he's on an expiring deal at 2 years, $4.2 million. With the cap rising, you're going to see an increase in average annual value on these bridge deals. And it's going to look probably similar to how some long-term deals look. So right now he's making $4.2 million. If the cap were to stay what it is without the increase we're seeing, I would say 4.8 is probably the highest I would go. I don't think he needs to be at $5 million if the cap was staying at what it currently is. However, with the cap rising, I do think he could maybe get $5 million for 2 years. I don't think the Flames should sign him long term. I think they kind of need to flesh out who he is as a player and see where to go from there. Because the last thing you want to do is be locked in for the next 7 years on a player you really don't have much success with yet. So I would say probably $5 million. I'm sure it'll be more. That is just where I feel comfortable. And if it's not more, that's great. That means my cap projections actually make sense to me and everyone else out there. But In all seriousness, I do think that a 2-year deal, 3 max, is where you wanna be with Frost. And so be it, because Joel Farabee is making $5 million a year. Morgan Frost is kind of a better producer, I guess, at the moment than Farabee, who, I mean, they both had 3 goals, um, in their 31, 32 games with the Flames. So, I don't know if that qualifies as a need to be making the same amount as him, but that's neither here nor there. That is something for Craig Conroy to discuss with, Morgan Frost and his agent. But Joel Farabee is so interesting to me because I thought, and this is probably my fault. This is absolutely just the way that my brain works, and I didn't do a ton of research when he was, um, like, prior to the Flames acquiring him. I thought that he was, like, a consistent 20-goal scorer. The way that people would talk about him and the way that, um, with that contract, I figured he was, like, 20 to 25 goals a season. He has only scored 20 plus goals in a season twice. He in his last 5 seasons, or sorry, let's in the last 4 seasons, it's been 15, 22, 11, and then if you combine Philly and Calgary, 11. So, this is not necessarily a bad thing necessarily, but you need more. And, was Philly just not able to get more out of him? Was it a systems issue? Was it him just not being able to hit 15 goals consistently? Like, it's very interesting to me because I feel like the expectations are high for him. Not Jonathan Huberdeau high, but you should be playing up to your contract. The way that I had someone explain it to me years ago, if you've been around here for a while, it was my old co-host Nick. And he basically projected contracts by tens. So if you scored 80 points a season, you'd make around $80 million. 8 times 10. So with that projection, Joel Farabee, for making $5 million a year, he should be about 50 points a season. He has scored 50 points a season once. So I would like to see, let's see. So 25 points 2 seasons. So he had 25 points combined last year. And then 50 seasons the year before, or 50 points the season before, and 39 before that. So he's scored between 34 and 50 points in the past few years. So to me, expecting 35 to 45 points out of him is not unrealistic. Let him get settled. Enjoy the longer off season. Not have to worry about the stress of moving and figuring everything out. The pressures of playing in a new city. The pressure of playing in Philadelphia is so different from the pressure of playing in Calgary. You have a coach that, likes you, and everyone on the team. So you don't have to worry about any weird dynamics there or him like walking out mid-season. But at the end of the day, they both need to perform more. If Morgan Frost is going to be making close to $5 million a year, you're going to need to be back up in the range of 40 to 45 points as well. So I'll be interested to see what the contract extension looks like, what the Flames are able to do this offseason to maybe bring something in to, shake up the roster a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I don't think the Flames need to go out and sign Sam Bennett or Mitch Marner. I think that'd be silly and way too you're jumping the gun in terms of what you're trying to do with your rebuild. So let's trade for Marco Rossi. Let's do it and trade Rasmus Anderson so you can get that draft capital and building for your future. Because sometimes you have to take the lumps, the real lumps, before taking the success. And I hope that this was a season of lumps for Frostby, and the next year they're going to taste the reward. But that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic day. It is nice and sunny here. I'm going to go take my book out on the patio and read for a little bit. Make sure you're following the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And I will see you all tomorrow.